I'm Zara, and I have actually got a perspective on education that might be a bit broader than most. I lived in 4 different countries now and been in education systems in 4 different countries. And what I've noticed is that every single country has the same problem. And I said, and those countries are England, Scotland, America, and France, right? And now I've been in New Zealand for a little while, and I'm hearing and seeing and experiencing, again, the same problems, the same issues. And I think they come from the beginnings, the origins of the system that we have, right? So the system that we have started from a question, and it was a question similar to this, yeah? How do we educate young people to be workers with a known industry and with needs that we can predict? That was the question behind the creation of our system. That was the only question. How do we get kids ready? And every country, strangely enough, seems to have answered that question in the same way. And they created something that looks like that. What did they need? What do you need for people to work there and there? Well, you need them to have a set of basic skills. You need them to read, write, do math. You need them to be able to do what they're told. You need them to focus. You need them to start work when the bell goes and stop when the bell goes. And you only need them to have a finite piece of knowledge, right? You don't need them to be creating the world anew. What you need them to do is something repetitive all day long, right? So that became quite easy. How do you do that? But today, we have a whole new question that's forming the creation of our education system, because the world is completely different. Okay? Now we're asking, how do we educate young people to thrive in a world of possibility, where we have no idea what the world's going to look like? Even when these 2 young women get out of high school, we probably don't know what half of the jobs are going to be, right? 10 years ago, none of these jobs existed, right? An app developer, a market research data miner, a millennial generational expert. Do you all know what a millennial is? Anyone not know what millennial means? You don't? You're the closest to being millennials. Millennials are the 20, 30-somethings generation, that the first ones to grow up with the internet as part of their childhood. Social media manager. It's 2015. 10 years ago, Facebook didn't even exist, or Twitter, or Instagram, or any of that, right? This is a completely different world. Anyone, any idea what a chief listening officer is? Because I didn't know. Sounds cool. It's well paid. Anyone want the job? All it is you get to sit and read everything about your company that's being put out over the internet and report back and make sure your company has a good image. Sounds a bit boring actually in the end. It is important, yeah. And then the rest. User experience designer? Any ideas? You would think, but actually it's a product creator. I had to Google it because I had no idea. But it's all about creating a full experience for people. Like you want a new kind of alarm clock that acts like nature, so it might have a light that comes on gradually, like the sun coming up, and music and birds and whatever it will take. A whole full user experience. It requires a lot of creativity. Okay. Now, that's one thing. The next piece is some of the jobs we even already think we know what they are have completely changed. Right? A market person, a marketing person used to go out, figure out what the market was, maybe do some focus groups and decide how we're going to put this product out, produce some stuff, put it out there and see if it sells. Well, now they've run crowdfunding to pre-sell stuff, and they figure out if they've got a market that way. They don't have to waste a lot of time and money. But I'm kind of predicting that's even going to be short-lived. How many people are really getting tired of being asked to contribute to crowdfunding? Right? We're getting flooded with it. And that's part of this modern world, is the iterations of what's happening, what's changing, what's coming. It's so fast, we can barely keep up with it. This won't last very long because something else is going to come along. The other thing we do know, or one thing we know about the workforce or the work market that's coming, we think we know, right, is that 80% of the jobs are going to be in small businesses, which actually makes sense because you don't need a large workforce if, for instance, you have a 3D printer to do manufacturing, right? So the business is going to be smaller. A lot of it's going to be freelance, so people are going to be creating their own jobs. And they're largely place free, right? So that means a lot of people don't need to go to work. I've been a digital nomad, as it's called, for nearly 3 years now. That means that as long as I have internet and my computer, I can work from anywhere. It's permitted me to travel across America 5 times, just driving around. I haven't had to pay rent or bills for like 2 or 3 years, just because I don't have to. And when I need to have a place, I just rent a place that's furnished and hang out for a while. And this is a lifestyle that especially lots of the millennials are choosing, right? And we don't know what the others are going to choose. So, okay. So the work that we're doing has changed, but so has the workplace. This doesn't look like an office or a cubicle. Nothing like it. This is Google's workplace, and it's designed to have lots of different spaces. Now, I actually work with a company called eWork that helps workplace to transform, right? And preparing children to function in the world and create a living is a really huge function of education that nobody's going to argue with. But that workplace has completely changed, and you can't prepare kids for that by sitting them in rows of desks, right? What are employers with those spaces encouraging? Creativity, collaboration. And they've also recognized that different tasks need different types of spaces, right? So there's a space you go to collaborate as a group, there's a space you go to work on your own, there's a space to go to make a phone call. All the different tasks have a differentiated space, and that's the workspace of now. Major companies are doing that. Okay, so we talked a little bit about the role of information and how that's changed, right? The employers with this workspace really don't care how much knowledge, which you talked about, you've acquired. They don't care. They know you can take this and find out anything you want to know in less than a second, right? Do you need kind of a core base of how to go about finding that? Yes, you need to know how to learn it, but you don't have to carry it around. What they want, and this is the new currency, is visible, shareable value. What value are you bringing to their company? And how do they measure that? Well, how do you measure what people are doing at work if you can't see them? Which often you can't. Even if you're going to work and all the different workspaces are scattered all over the building, it's not the way it used to be where you sit at your desk and you can see everybody and you know how long they went for lunch and if they took too many breaks and all of that, and were you there from 8 to 5? That just doesn't really exist anymore. So how do they evaluate your value? It's by what you produce. If you're given a project and you complete it on time and you solve the problem, you are now valuable, and nobody cares if it took you an hour to do that or 2 weeks. The core is, did you get it done? Right? This is actually really freeing for us, right? That we don't have to be tied to schedules and things like that, then we can be creative. Okay, so this is what employers want and what the work world wants, and really what we want. We want shareable value. What I'm going to ask you, though, is what do you want for your children? What do you want for their lives? What do you value as outcomes for their education experience? Right? So under the big pieces of paper, of which there are 2, there's one smaller one, and I'd like you to just think about that for a minute and write a few of those down. What is the value you want your children to get? What are the outcomes for them? What do their lives look like as a result of their learning experience, of their education? I'm going to have you, what do you want from your educational experience for your life?
I'm happy to dive into things without...
Okay, stop. And we're going to have you share back, and Steve is again going to write on a paper over here. So just pick one thing, one value, one outcome. You can do it there if you want. Yep, that works. Yep. So the things that you all value and want for your children. Okay. All right, we'll start over here this time. Give us one major big thing. Emotional intelligence, please, is a value. Happy children. Happy children. Yay. It's funny, that's usually really high on top of the list. Yeah. Over here, what's one thing? Yep, your group. Happy. Yeah. Happiness from life. Do you have anything else since we already have happiness?
They feel confident in their abilities to learn.
Confident.
High self-esteem.
Confidence, high self-esteem. Okay.
Confidence and self-esteem would be what we want.
Confidence and self-esteem. Fantastic. Okay. Right here.
It's kind of overlapping there. Shall I just mention it and then
Yeah.
So we like to see children to be confident and a wholesome person, to be able to deal with different situations in life, and like that mind, body, and soul connection. That's something which I kind of read in those things as well.
Yeah.
Also, love for self-directed learning.
So you want an outcome to be a love for self-directed
Yes, like
learning.
the person who loves to.
Okay, someone.
Nourished.
But they love learning, basically. And so, okay, great. Thank you. Next table over there.
To be flexible and adaptable.
Flexibility, adaptability. Wonderful. Okay. Over here, what would you like? Do you have different things?
Having the power to create their own experience.
Power to create their experience. Wonderful. Welcome. Come on in. Hello. Steve just made you a seat right there. Okay. So that was power to create their own experience. Okay. And then this group here. Literacy and numeracy. And they are actually in the space, if they actually appear on the list when I ask people this, they are generally at the bottom of it. Can you add another one? I don't know. Can she add another one? Okay, you can add another one. To take risks and not be afraid of making mistakes. Yeah. That actually relates to this archaic practice of assigning numbers to achievement, to grades. Giving, is it called grades in New Zealand? Or marks? Is it English or American? Okay. Is it grades? Do you give grades or give marks? Or both? Well, that makes it easy. All right, it's both. Okay. So the outcomes you want for children, for education: emotional intelligence, which is of course related to happiness, confidence, self-esteem, a love of self-directed learning, flexibility, adaptability, the power to create their own experience, literacy and numeracy, and to take risks and not be afraid of mistakes. You have more. Oh, I know you have lots more, and I'd love to have time to share them all. Is it okay? Is everybody agreeable that we'll go with those for now? Just so that we can keep going, and we'll keep an awareness of those other things as well, and as they come up. Okay? Wonderful. Okay, so this list here is very typical. I've asked that question in many, many different places, and these are the kinds of outcomes parents most want. And I think that you can put them both into those two main categories, right? you want your child's success in their future life, and for that they need all of those qualities, right? And the best development of their person, which is also covered in that. Yeah, just taking a guess. Well, kind of. Unfortunately, the system we have right now is really not able to do either of those things very effectively, and there's lots of reasons for that. But 21st century education, because it's asking a different question, because it's asking how can people thrive rather than how can they survive, which working in factories and things really is survival, isn't it? It's not really a thrival kind of existence. Then we're asking for higher outcomes. We're asking how can we get here. Self-esteem, as you notice, is second from the top. Okay, so let's start down here. Physiological needs. In a regular classroom, often that level isn't even met. Because if you're hungry or thirsty, how are you going to attend to your learning? And yet we seem to have these specific times and specific times only when children can eat and drink. So we haven't even taken care of that. And why is that? Simply because if you're working on a factory line, you want everybody going at the same time. That's the only reason. We think it's because there might be rats in the classroom, but not really. Okay. Safety and security, we're pretty good at that. Although I know lots of schools where kids are going through metal detectors every morning. Does that exist here in this country anywhere? Not even in a big city like Auckland? No. Okay, good. So we've got that here in New Zealand. No, I seriously worked on a campus. There were 10 and 11-year-old children who started their day going through a metal detector, putting their stuff on a table, having it searched by people, and then picking it back up after they went through the detector, and then not being allowed to speak all day and being tested every 3 weeks. And why am I telling you this? Because my sense is that with these new national standards and everything, that's the direction that this government wants to take the education here, and I'm just warning you to nip it in the bud, because I know where that goes. I've seen it, and you don't want it. Okay, anyway, back to this. 21st century education. Okay, what we're going for here, is this idea of self-actualization, right? That is part of creating your own experience, creating your own life. You do that from a space of self-actualization. But kids today really feel like the basis of their safety and their physiological needs, of course, is having a connection to the internet. But what we want to do is take it beyond that, right? In 21st century education, we're saying that, first of all, having it as a pyramid is actually very limiting, because that makes the actualization part finite. It's trapped, it can't go anywhere. But if we make it circles, then it's an ever-expanding journey that our educational experience can support. And in fact, we want to go further, and we want to talk about this outer ring, which is the social actualization, the complete transformation of our culture and society, well, perhaps not the whole culture, but of our society, and to solve the issues before us. When I say social actualization, that's what I mean. What is the next version of our society that we can come up with that will solve our problems? And we need 21st century education for that, because it opens up the gateway of creativity for children and for us with them to do that, to solve our issues. So what we're asking is, what's possible? What's really possible? This new education opens up that doorway. And this is Tony Robbins. Is he known here? Yeah? Yeah. And he says, what we can or cannot do, or what we consider possible or impossible, is rarely a function of our true capability. It is more likely a function of our beliefs about who we are, which relates, of course, to confidence and self-esteem. So who are we? I believe every one of us is born with this inside us. We're all a treasure chest, right? And we have gifts inside. But unfortunately, the system of education we're working with right now tends to open it up and look for the coal, look for what's inside that isn't so wonderful, and then tries to dress it up. But no matter what we say about it, we just keep focusing on the coal, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's just coal. And what is the coal? The coal is everything you're not good at that our system says we must figure out as quickly as possible so we can make sure you do lots of it. right? If you're weak in mathematics, we're going to make sure you do extra math. Whatever your weaknesses are, we're going to shore that up, because you should learn at the rate we think you should learn, because of course you're all the same. But we know you're not. It doesn't really make any sense, and it doesn't build confidence. Instead, what we aim to do is find that gold and grow that, so that confidence and self-esteem comes from it. And I think would anyone disagree with this? That every child is gifted, but we're just unwrapping it at a different time. So, given that, does it make any sense? And now I'm going to really challenge you to start to change your thinking, because this is huge. Most people today think a predetermined, preset curriculum is a really good idea. But what does it do? It means every child has to unwrap their gifts at the same time. Just because that's the day it's happening, you're learning that today. And what's the other reason? Because there's going to be a test on it at some point that you need to pass to prove your worthiness to go into the world and function. This paradigm, yeah, I go beyond saying it's unnecessary. I think it's a crime, because it does force us to focus on the coal and rather than the gold. So let's really look at that, though, this idea, because I know for some of you that's a big jump. Oh my God, no set curriculum. What the heck are we going to do? It's going to be mayhem, it's chaos, and nobody knows what to do. But if you really think about it, if we look at all the knowledge in the world, and that's that shape, and we put all the children in it, and all of us in it, because we were children, we are in some ways, and look at all the different gifts that we have, and we see this big picture, and what do we do with all of that? We say, oh, but the only thing they really need to know is that. And where does that box come from? That comes from the 19th and 20th century, doesn't it? From we know what they're going to be doing, we know the skills they need to have, and that's it. So we're going to make everybody get in this box. It's going to get a bit crowded. And oh my goodness, there's bits sticking out. They haven't quite got it all yet. There's still some things in the way. They're not quite ready. Let's give them a test and make sure they're all on the same page and they've all got it. And they give them the test. And when we give them the test, we're cutting off those last little bits that just don't quite cut it. Yep. So now they're all in the box and they fit perfectly, and we can say we did a good job because we've got good passing rates on our exams, and the kids are getting out there and they're getting to college. But the problem is they've lost a part of themselves that's really important in that process. I may not be speaking for everybody, but I'm probably speaking for a lot of you. When I say when I went to university, I still really didn't know what I wanted to do or be. I didn't really know what my passion was. I kind of discovered it by accident because I was always so busy. I was actually one of the 20% that this old education system served, in the sense that I'm really good at academic linear learning. It's kind of ironic that I'm standing up here saying let's not do it. I'm an excellent test taker. I love them. I put me in a classroom, I'm doing great. But one thing I've noticed in recent years, and I just really came to my awareness, is that I'm not very imaginative anymore. I can be creative, but when people say, oh, try to think about this or visualize this, I just can't really seem to do it. But a lot of the kids I know that don't do well in this linear learning actually have these incredible imaginations. And a lot of them think in pictures. And they're processing those pictures at 32 frames a second. And the teacher's speaking at 5 to 7 words per minute or something, maybe per second. And they're bored out of their brains. And those are the ones that the system loses, because it's just not designed for them. So you can't have one way of doing it for everybody. So what are we doing when we say, just learn what's in that box? What we're doing is saying, you're going to be really learned, but the problem is, what you know is all about a world that doesn't exist by the time you get to it. And that may have been true back then, it's definitely true now. We have no idea what the world's going to be like when these kids in this school today get out there. So, what we're saying in 21st century education is it's time to let the kids out of the box, to let go of it completely. That new education is self-directed, it focuses on strengths, and it has to be collaborative. So a lot of what you all put that you know, you're absolutely right. That's exactly what 21st century education has to be like to meet the needs of the 21st century world. But the question you all have, of course, is how do we do that? Well, the first thing we have to do is understand that there is no box whatsoever, never was, never has been, except if we actually decide to make one, right? So I would suggest that we stop making a box and leave everything kind of very open. And let's see what that might look like. So what is it? You said that. What is 21st century education? It is innovative, it's collaborative, and it's relevant to the world. And this is a lot of writing, I know, but it's really worth listening to this. Okay. So there's some principles that underlie what we're doing. One is that learning is natural and it's happening all the time. And the other that's not there that I would add is I often hear, oh, we want to teach children to love learning. Who thinks that's a good idea? Nobody. Everybody. Come on, you all know, you all think that that's a good idea. Let's teach them to love learning. Okay, good. No. Why is it not a good idea? Well, because they already do. There's nothing that needs to be taught. Do you ever hear of a baby that refuses to learn to speak or talk or walk? Or a child that doesn't ask Mummy, why is the sky blue? Of course not, because kids love to learn. What happens when we tell them what they have to learn and when they have to learn it and how they have to learn it and then test them to see if they know it, is they start to hate it. They start to see it as a chore. And yet when they get out of that environment and go home, what do? Get completely involved and focused in something they really like doing, and you can't stop them doing it for hours and hours and hours, and you start worrying that they're becoming obsessed and da-da-da. But why do they do that? Because that's how learning actually naturally occurs, in big chunks of time, really focused with a great passion. Okay, yeah. So the other part is we believe self-direction is really important. When people make their own decisions, they learn better. And children are, yes, people. People develop their strengths through, when there is a purpose to your learning. So when you set an intent and then go ahead and create that intent and then think about what you just created, then you're developing strengths and you're developing purpose, and you still keep your love of learning because it's meaningful. Okay? This is actually a very interesting one, engagement. There's a man, Don Berg, has done some research on the hidden curriculum, and that's what this is referring to. The culture and the environment that you're learning in teaches you as much as what is being taught to you. It teaches you how to interact with the world and what the world is about and who you are. So that's a really huge piece that has to be looked at and taken into account. And then the last one we already looked at, that the education has to create shareable value. And children, youth, they do want to share, they do want to bring value, and they want to do it way before we're letting them. But we'll come back to that. Okay. So, before we go any further, does anybody object to children being any of those four things? Independent, motivated, passionate, or creative? That's what I thought. Okay. All right, good. So, if we think independence is a good idea, why don't we let them practice self-direction? And if we think we want them to be motivated, why not let them pursue what interests them? And if we want them to be passionate, why not let them engage and explore what they absolutely love? It's a bit of a no-brainer, isn't it? And if we want them to be creative, why not give them an opportunity to maybe create their own education? And if we want them to create a better world, why don't we just let them get on with it? They want to. Aren't they always really good at pointing out our hypocrisy? And don't we kind of answer but then go, yeah, they're right, but what can we do about it? Yeah? Well, we could ask them. I'm sure they've got some answers. So these are some of the guiding principles and things behind this new type of, well, it's not even new, behind learning for this new millennium, this new century. So there's innovation, collaboration, and relevancy. Okay, how are we doing collaboration? How are we going to be collaborative? And some of you already said it. We need project-based learning, service learning, and to embrace the idea of teacher as a learner and a learner as a teacher. So when you give kids a project to do, they have to work together to solve the problem, and it automatically brings all the knowledge areas together, which I'll show you in a minute. Okay. And then service learning relates directly to letting them recreate the world, because that's where you pick a project where you have the kids look at their community, see a problem that might be there, and then create a project to solve that problem, right? So it's real hands-on learning. And you bet that if they come across some information or some skill they don't have that they need to solve that problem, to make their community better, they're going to find out how to do it. And if that means learning algebra at the age of 10, they'll do it. Okay. So, yes. Yeah, I can review that for you. So service learning is a form of project-based learning where rather than just picking a random type project, you pick a project that needs, by looking into your community, seeing a problem, and then solving it. Yeah, sure, no problem. Okay, so how does that really work? What does that really look like? Why does that work? And how does that address keeping up with all of the different subject areas and learning across the curriculum, so to speak, right? So let's have a look. There's all the different subject areas, and they are innately interconnected. Knowledge is interconnected. You can't learn one thing without eventually needing to learn in another area, right? So we can look at it like this. All the subjects are here all the time, right? They're all out in the world. And each subject area and each teacher of that subject thinks that subject is the most important. And because they think it's the most important, they see it absolutely everywhere. And so they tend to kind of take over. You get lost. And in the math fantasy world, there's only math. In history's fantasy world, it's all about history. And in social science's fantasy world, of course, it's all about social science. Now, so, in actual fact, as a matter of convenience, somehow we thought it would be easier to keep all those subjects separated, right? That's why we designed it that way to begin with. And I really apologize for that. Because as an educator, I feel ancestrally responsible for that error, right? That was based on us not knowing how people learn best. But now science has shown us that that's not the most effective way, and we have a lot of research to prove to us that it's actually better when you bring everything together, because when you leave them apart, they all feel good, but it doesn't actually work for human learning at all. And you end up with this disconnect, and you end up unable to fully dive into things, because by keeping it disconnected, you can't follow the thread of where it's taking you, where your inquiry is going. So when we actually start to bring all of them together, all the different subjects, it all starts to weave in, and what we get is a full picture. And a context. And context in learning is one of the main things that we messed up on as well, right? The context. And it's again another strength of project-based learning. Yeah, I love that picture. When I remember the first day in Golden Bay, and I saw that and click, it's just gorgeous. And I knew this was a special place because I figured that you all here must know this, to have created something like that and decorated your town with it. I want to come back here, this picture, this context. So what's the role of context? Well, when we designed education to start with, psychology was still really new. And what we didn't know is this idea of the schema, right? People don't learn well in isolated facts. We don't learn isolated facts well. We are really good, though, at creating a schema or a picture, And when new knowledge comes in, the human brain fits that knowledge into this existing picture. But what happens when you say to a child, well, today we're going to learn to multiply 2-digit numbers, because that's what we're doing today, and there's no other context, and they don't have anywhere to kind of put that really. Or today we're going to learn the difference between a noun and a verb, but there's no underlying reason for it other than that's what we're doing today because that's in the curriculum. There's no schema to put it in. So they might learn it in the sense of be able to tell you what you just told them, but it doesn't ever get fully integrated. For example, has anybody ever crammed for an exam? Taken the test? And if they'd been asked to take the test 2 days later, would probably have failed it, even though they got an A? Yeah, right? Why is that? Because we didn't integrate the knowledge, we just learned it for the test because it was too isolated from the bigger picture of life and learning, okay? We messed up when we designed the system. Well, I won't say that, that's harsh. We were ignorant of how people really learn. Yep. So we need to have a context, and project-based learning gives us that. And to bring that home, if we have time, I'd like to do this activity. Yes, we do. Excellent. Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to take the other big piece of paper, right? And as a group, I want you to come up with as many ideas as you can that would allow you to explore the topic. And I put carrots, but I asked the younger kids earlier what would be a really boring topic. And they said boredom. And I thought, well, that would be good. But one little boy said kissing. Kissing's disgusting. It's horrible. That would be really boring. I was like, oh yeah, it's really boring. All right. So these are the subject areas I want you to focus on, right? Math, reading, writing, history, geography, music, art, drama, and science. And I want you to pictorially represent on this big paper some kind of mind map, starting with that topic. Some kind of activity or product that you could do that would help you learn about carrots, and that's it really, right? Use a large paper and a colored markers to create a graphic mind map of the relationship of the ideas and the subjects, right? So carrots, what are the relationships with all those subject areas? What's one thing you could do that would relate carrots to all of those different things? And do that first, and then we'll see if we have time for you to tell me how you'll know that you actually learned any of this. Okay. This should be easy for teachers because they do this a lot. You're welcome. Yeah. Yeah. Good. Good.
Yeah. If we think about carrots publicly, will more people grow carrots? And then
I love it. I love it. Sorry to cut you off in mid-creative flow. It's one of the sins of education is to do that. Of course, it happens all the time when you're given an hour to teach 100 different things and the kids are just getting into it and the bell's about to go. Okay, so on this assignment, I want you all to just share one thing that you came up with that you really liked and say which subject area it was, yeah? Who wants to start? I'll let you choose this time. If you all look at your papers, do you see, is this true, what they just said, that you would have probably, to complete all of this, you would definitely have to be using reading, writing, and mathematics in some way in order to do any of it, right? It's going to come in. Well, that's true of anything you choose to learn about. And that actually puts reading, writing, and mathematics in their place, which is as tools for learning and not as the outcome that we're aiming for. I'm sorry, but reading is just not that hard, but we're making it hard. Here's the analogy I came up with that I love. If we gave babies speaking lessons where we started with the sounds of the language, and then showed them how to make them into words, and then sentences, and then tried to teach them the gestures that go with language, they'd all have speech defects, wouldn't they? Right? But that's a much more complex thing to learn than how to read, which is this two-dimensional thing where you already know what it all means, and now you're just learning that this symbol relates to it. Right? But we make it so hard because we break it down too much. There are so many hundreds of cases. You were asking for evidence earlier that this type of learning works. There are hundreds of cases of children who, when they're not forced to read at any particular time, spontaneously do it without ever being told how. Because after years and years of exposure, they get it. And if that doesn't happen, the need occurs, the need arrives one day for them to do it, and they make a decision to. And in every case that that happens, they end up reading better in a very short period of time than children that were forced to do it before they were ready. And there's hundreds of anecdotal records to prove this is true. So that's how we know that learning occurs differently to what we thought. Yes?
What age are we talking about here? All ages? Right through
For what?
everything? This way of learning?
Oh, yeah, we can definitely apply it to all ages. It's going to look a little bit different depending on the age. The room might look different and so on. Save that question to the end again, because once we get into some actual practices, then I think you'll start to see how it can apply to most age groups. Yeah, of math. Yeah, I'm going to talk a lot about math, because I think that's something, I'm a parent. My son, he's out of school now, he's 28, but I actually sent him through very traditional education. And he's fine. I would say if I could do it again with what I know now, I would just do it really, really differently. But I can relate. My point is, I can relate to how parents feel and the importance that we have on making sure our kids are ready for the world, right? And I wouldn't be up here telling you all this if I didn't know beyond any shadow of a doubt that this is a better way to do it. Okay. So, all right, do we want to do this? We already did, didn't we? Because you're all reading it, aren't you? So, just to go back on what we've already said, that the way we can prepare young people for a world that doesn't exist yet is to empower them to create it themselves. Isn't that powerful? And that goes back to another idea, which is, do we want our children to consume the world that already exists, or create their own version of it, or be the creators of it? Yeah. And most of us think that consumerism's gone crazy, and we're right. We've already said that when people make their own decisions about what they're learning, then they become stronger and more confident. Do you feel a difference between if you were a child and you were said, I want to learn about carrots, and somebody sat with you and said, okay, well, let's look at what you could do to learn about carrots, and you came up with a plan that looked like that would feel different, and that you would feel different inside, and you would feel more confident than if somebody walked into the class one day and said, today's topic is carrots, everybody sit down, open your book to page 22, let's read about carrots. Now answer the questions and prove that I've just taught you this, and then we'll move on. Right? It feels different, doesn't it? It's an entirely different experience. And we talked about giving them practice in self-direction so they can be independent. Okay, so let's look at this a little more detail. Self-directed learning. Right now, it looks kind of like that in many, many places, yeah? I expect you all to be independent, innovative, critical thinkers who will do exactly as I say. There's a word of warning here. Not a word of warning. This is an important difference to make. Self-directed does not mean the same as self-paced. Okay? Self-paced would be when you use a tool like this. Is anyone not familiar with Khan Academy? Not familiar? Okay. Khan Academy is an online platform with free videos where you can learn about just about anything. You just sign up for your account and you can go and learn. And it's often touted as one of the ways to do 21st century learning, to do new learning. We can just sit kids down and let them work their way through Khan Academy or any other online forum. But that's taking the technology way too far. Really, what that is, well, it can have a role. So let's just put it this way. If I tell you, hey, you need to know this math or this language by January 20th because there's going to be a test on it, but here, sit down with Khan Academy and work your way up to it at your own pace, that's not self-directed. That's just self-paced to a degree, but not really, because you still have to get there by a certain time, right? Self-directed is when you choose what you're learning and when you're learning it. Got that? And the ultimate in creative self-direction is when you give children the opportunity to design their own education. Because up to now, as far as I know, the scientists that designed our 19th and 20th century model didn't ask the main people that should have been asked, were they? The missing stakeholders have always been the youth. We tend as adults to sit down, figure out how we think it should be done, and not really spend a whole lot of time asking the consumer what they want. But I have a friend in America called Charlie who started a company called Imagining Learning, and he did exactly that. He goes around and he holds listening sessions and he asks them if they could create their learning in any way they wanted, what would that look like? And this is what they say. And he usually works with kids aged between 10 and 17, and he has them create these beautiful pictures. These are 4 feet by 8 feet, so these are big. And as you see, there's choice, tolerance, love. But their comments are what make me want to cry sometimes, although this one's not so bad. Let us live in high school, not be prepared for life. I remember in high school, I felt like I had something to give the world, but I was too busy doing other things that didn't make much sense to me. Yeah.
Well, that carries through, right? You're not really living, you're doing everything you need to, and that content you carry right through your life.
I think it tends to, right? Yeah, we start out, what do we learn in elementary school? Why? Because it's preparing us for secondary school. Why are we doing secondary school? Because it's preparing us for college or university. Why are we doing university? Because it's preparing us for work. And why are we doing work? So that we can retire and stop working. Right? That's been the past. Yeah.
Statistically, a lot of people are going, many people are going to have short lives.
They wait too long.
School experience, the most in school life they're unhappy, and
Yeah.
they have a short life. Well, that's a real big rip-off.
You do, yeah, you lose it. And if you live a long life in that sense, in that way, then you're not really alive anyway. Okay, so there's another one. This one actually did make me almost cry. Andrea says, I wasn't going to have kids, but if you make this school, I will. And what are they telling us? It's really obvious. It's in big orange letters, isn't it? Listen to us. We have something to say. We have shareable value, and we want to give it to the world. Stop making us sit down and do this meaningless crap. Learning.
It's a great list on the top left of that big picture too.
Was it? What does it say?
The previous one.
Previous one. Next one.
What classes, breaks between, longer functions, excursions, connections with universities, online classes, schedules.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's what they want. I would say I have kind of done this with young people, and the biggest one is, in actual fact, the choice thing. It doesn't matter how old they are, they want to choose what they're learning. And then this one, did I say they point out our hypocrisy? We keep taking history and over again, and yet we obviously aren't learning from it. And again, you see, what have they put here? Love, acceptance, safety, justice. You what? No cliques, yeah. I think that's more of an American thing, isn't it? The high schools there, you've seen American high school movies. It really is like that. It's very strange. I didn't go to high school in America, I just went to university. Okay, and this was a rather angry young man, I think. Grades put the focus on excellent, not saying much about anything, right? Have any of you ever written a paper or done an assignment thinking, I'll just write what I think they want me to say and make sure it's long enough, and oh, it's too short, so let me, I can pad that out a bit and I can do this. It's just an exercise in futility, and it's meaningless. And again, we see choice, belief, freedom, voice, independence, achievement. So would kids left to their own devices, if this is what they're asking for, be likely to do nothing? They never do nothing. Ah, yes, this is the video I'd like to play if possible. But let's see how we're doing on time. It's a young man who made a rap. Yeah, we want to see it. Okay, we'll see it. We just have to get the sound on it. Oops, goes back. How do I get it to play? There we go.
Revolution and Represent 107.3 FM. My name is Tarek. Now listeners, you may remember not too long ago we had a spoken word artist by the name of Silly Break. Came down, got the live session, and a lot of you were excited about that. I was excited this morning when I opened up a package, had no idea what it was. Opened it up, put it in the player, pressed play, and it totally blew me away. It's his brand new piece from his brand new The Dorm Room EP. I'm going to have to let spoken word do what it does best and let it speak for itself. Brand new Silly Break.
It's good. Oh, does it need to be louder? I'd have to mess it all up to get it out. I think it's loud enough.
Right now, there is a kid finishing parents' evening in a heated discussion with his mother, saying, why does he have to study subjects he will never ever use in his life? And she will look at him blank-eyed, stifle a sigh, think for a second, and then lie. She'll say something along the lines of, you know, to get a good job you need a good degree, and these subjects will help you get a good degree. We never had this opportunity when I was younger. And he will reply, but you were young a long time ago. What do you know? And she won't respond, although what he implies makes perfect sense, that society's needs would have changed if she was 16. But she will ignore him, grip the hand more sternly, then drag him to the car. But what she doesn't know is that she didn't ignore him just to shut him up. She didn't lie because they were just returning from parents' evening and the argument in the hallway would look bad on her resume. She won't lie because she just spent the last 1 hour convincing a stern-faced teacher that she would ensure that her child studies more at home. No. She will lie simply because she does not know any better herself. Although her whole adult life she has never used or applied Pythagoras' theorem, pathetic fallacy, and still does not know the value of X. She will rely on society to tell her that her child, who has one of the sharpest minds in the school, is hyperactive, unfocused, easily distracted, and wayward. Students, how many equations, subjects, and dates did you memorize just before an exam never to use again? How many A grades did you get, which were never asked for when you applied for a job? How many times did you remember something 5 minutes just after the teacher said stop writing, only to receive the results 1 month later to realize that you were only 1 mark short of the top grade? Does that mean remembering 5 minutes earlier would have made you more qualified for a particular job? Well, on the application form it would have. We all have different abilities, thought processes, experiences, and genes. So why is a class full of individuals tested by the same means? Does that mean Cheryl thinks she's dumb because she couldn't do a couple of sums? And if this issue is not addressed properly, it then becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Then every school has the audacity to have a policy on equality. The irony. Exams are society's method of telling you what you're worth. But you can't let society tell you what you are, because it's the same society that tells you that abortion is wrong, but then looks down on teenage parents. The same society that sells products to promote natural hair, looks, and smooth complexion, with the model on the box half Photoshop, and have fake lashes and hair extensions, with pastors that preach charity but own private jets, imams that preach against greed but all fat, parents that say they want educated kids but constantly marvel at how rich Richard Branson is, governments that preach peace but endorse wars, that say they believe so much in the importance of higher education and further learning, then why increase tuition fees every single year? I believe Miss Jefferson when she took me into the office and said that my exams would be imperative to my success. Because we was taught to always follow when Miss Jefferson led. But then I took Jefferson out of the equation and learned to think for myself. I realized we was taught to always follow when Miss led. The irony. Tests such as tests, but the finals are never final. Because they never prepare us for the biggest test, which is survival. And what I suggest is fairly outlandish. So I do not expect everyone to understand this, except for the kids who know what it feels like to be worth no more than that D or that A that you get on results day. And the ones whose best stories were never good enough for the English teacher, because apparently you missed out key little techniques, did not follow the class plan, and the language was too informal for him to understand. But then you reference Hamlet and Macbeth, and you fight the urge to express your contempt by partially clenching your fist with only your medius finger left protruding in the middle of your hand, and then asked if he was aware that Shakespeare was known as the innovator of slang, or the kid at the back of the class who thinks, why am I studying something that doesn't fuel my drive? But then when confronted with a math problem, his eyes come alive. So this one is for my generation, the ones who found what they were looking for on Google, the ones who followed their dreams on Twitter, pictured their future on Instagram, accepted destiny on Facebook. This one's for my failures and my dropouts, for my unemployed graduates, my shop assistants, cleaners and cashiers with bigger dreams, my self-employed entrepreneurs, my world changers and my dream chasers. Because the purpose of why I hate school but love education was not to initiate a worldwide debate, but to let them know that whether 72 or 88, 44 or 68, we will not let examiners decide our fate. Peace. On my phone, singing all alone, visualizing home, and
right? It's hard to follow that. Yeah. Okay. So just kind of breathe that in a minute and see how that feels, and remember what they're asking us to do. Yeah. Because they aren't stupid, they know, and they know young. So the imperative now, and it is an imperative, is to change our system so that these kids can thrive, so they can find meaning in life. And honestly, I'm not trying to be depressing, but the suicide rate of kids between 15 and 24 has tripled since the 70s and 80s, and it's not going down anytime soon. We're actually in a crisis. If we don't change this, it's not going to get any better. We really have to. So I'd like you to just take a minute and write down one thing on your paper in the L column, which is something you've learned already that you didn't know before. Just one for the whole group, if you would. And digest that a minute before we talk about mathematics, which seems awfully banal after this. Yeah. One thing that you've learned. Yeah. That you've learned from today. Anything you've learned now that you didn't realize before. Yeah. Anything you've learned from this presentation so far that you didn't know, just today. Just the stuff. If there is anything. There's something you've learned. More from... Yeah, I actually have a sheet that's got that on it. Yeah, it's good. And the one on YouTube has the words on it as well, which makes it easier to understand. You what?
I've already watched it once.
You already watched it? Yeah, it's good, isn't it? He's got some other ones I really like too, yeah. Yeah. Okay, so it was just to write down one thing. If you didn't get it written down, that's okay. You can just share orally, just because there's a lot more I want to share with you around what we are going to be able to do. Okay? All right. So, well, let's just share back from a couple of tables. Who would like to share one thing that you've learned so far? Anybody? Nope. Nope. No gold stars. Nope. Yeah, what have you learned? One thing you've learned. Yeah.
I said before about this way that you said we actually learn better something when it is taught or learned in context.
Yeah. So that was new. Okay, wonderful.
Well, it's sort of, I guess, it's sort of like, oh yes, I knew this, I just never thought about, and it explains everything.
Right, you just hadn't applied it to how we do learning at school before. Yeah, okay, great, thank you. And anybody else, other table? Yep, right here. Yeah. Yeah, the behaviors and everything that you learn. And there's a guy, Don Berg, that does that work. I want to repeat that, the hidden curriculum. You can look that up. He's got a lot of videos where you can learn more about it. And actually, while we're on that topic, before you go, I'm going to give you this little handout that's got the URLs just for that video and for a lot of other things and books that you can read and things you can follow up in. Okay. We could take one more. I think this group wanted to share, if you want to. Now we know why we got bored. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Okay. All right. I'm just wondering. We've got two choices. I have a lot more I can share. One piece is I would love to share this model called Agile Learning. That gives us a lot of tools that even the educators in this room might not know about yet because it's very new. And the other is we could talk more about maths as well before we do that. Is that valuable to people to talk about maths, to answer this? Yeah.
Well, I was trying to understand how that would follow because I remember an experience I had missing a year at high school and jumping ahead and being in a maths class and the entire year I didn't really understand anything and I left the whole life feeling, well, I don't understand maths. I dropped out of maths.
So I'm not good at maths.
So how does that fit in? Well, not even I don't understand because I didn't have a foundation. So how do you follow?
Well, in your case, I think it would actually have solved the problem for you to have been self-directed all along because there'd have been nothing to keep up with. You'd have just taken up where you left off.
Probably,
yeah. And then you'd never have had that feeling that you weren't really any good at it because you'd have just been doing what you needed to. You'd have been...
self-paced from your own definition?
Well, no, not really, because if you're learning maths because you're choosing to right then and it's serving you and it's related to your carrot project, then it's actually self-directed because you're choosing it, right? But you're also going at your own pace.
I just
No?
don't understand if you have different children on the same project at different levels and then you have something like maths, some things need a foundation. How do you do that without wasting out?
Okay. All right. Does anyone else not get that? Probably most people don't get that. How do you teach? Thank you. Okay, so we'll talk about that. All right. Okay, let's skip that and skip that. Can you read that? Okay. So while you all look at that, if you can read the words, I think it's interesting. It's how class is. I'm going to read you. Excuse me. I stood on my glasses earlier and they're just rigged up here. Okay. So what we found, you can keep looking at that and I'll read you a description of what actually is going on in a math class, in a regular math class. Okay. Because what we found is that kids that do self-directed math actually achieve much better, and here's why. The best explanation for this unexpected result comes down to an illusion about what happens in regular math class. It is not the fine-tuned, efficient machine people think it to be. It is actually an incredible waste of time that cultivates daydreaming and poor attitudes. A typical secondary school math class begins with a hubbub of students greeting each other and chatting, which continues until the teacher settles them down, attendance is checked, homework is checked, examples from homework are reviewed, and then the teacher gives the lesson. An attentive student may only need a few minutes to grasp the new material, but for the students who don't pay attention or who are lost at sea, the lesson is repeated and repeated again with the teacher targeting questions to command the attention of the disengaged. When the lesson is finished, the teacher minimizes the chance of disruption in the class by assigning enough homework to keep the best students busy until the end of class. The others are expected to finish the work at home, but often they only copy of the students' work when they get to school the next day. When the math class is analyzed, we see that very little new learning occurs. Okay. So one thing that does address what you two are saying is that that learning isn't really happening effectively anyway with the old way. All right? We need to establish that first. How many of you here would say you love math? You would sit and just do it? Yeah, I would. Okay. Wow, that's a higher percentage than usual. How many of you here would say you absolutely can't stand math? Most people I know are proud that they aren't good at math and that they're scared of it. Oh no, it's math. Yeah. Okay. Now, an hour of math in a student-led environment looks different. The emphasis on the lifelong learning skills translates into students developing how to make a good use of their time with focused efforts that drive to the goal of mastery learning. They do not need to spend time on things they already know. They do not need to spend time on exercises they do not need to do. They can combine sections where concepts have been broken down, paying attention to the whole instead of the parts, which potentially saves time and provides for a better grasp of concepts. They can choose the time of day that is best for them to work on math. They can choose the time of day that's best for them to work on math. I produce brain work best in the morning. Right? In the afternoon, I want to go for a tramp. Yeah? So they get to choose. And when they need help, they can choose to learn from a peer. It's said that the best teachers are often the people who have recently learned something because they best remember where the difficulties arise. If they get on a roll, they don't have to stop at the end of the hour. They can keep on working for as long as they want. When students manage their own time, they can complete course requirements in a fraction of the time required when someone else is managing it for them. And we see that again in this body of evidence over and over and over again. I've even seen and met young people who decided not to learn to read, don't gasp, don't be dismayed, till they were 11 years old. And within 3 months, they were reading better than their peers that had been being forced to since they were 6, and they actually liked it. Yeah? Okay, so I had a really good answer for you just a second ago. What was it? It was sparked by this. Okay. So different levels of kids in the same room. I think that's the true role of where things like Khan Academy can come in, is if there's a missing piece that they need right then to build a better foundation, we can have them go to some kind of technology, some kind of online, some personalized tutor like a Khan Academy to help them learn that and fill the gaps, right? But that doesn't become the whole curriculum. We don't sit them down there for 3 hours a day doing Khan Academy, right? We use it as the tool it's meant to be. And what we've actually found about making everybody do it at the same time is that that's one of the reasons that that children are underperforming in math. Okay, so we did that. I'm going to fast forward a little and just say that the context of learning now is very technological, or rather it's the information age. I don't know that young people really think that, but it's a cute cartoon. Yeah. Okay. Learning tools have evolved and changed over time, right? And this really gets to the core of what I just said, of where I think technology fits in to this picture is as a tool, not as the education. I don't ever want to see a day where we just sit children in front of computers and say, learn. That is not 21st century learning. These tools are just a tiny aspect of it. And there you see again the order, birth order, all the way up to the millennials. Gen X, that's me. Boomers, that's some other people, that's like here in your 60s maybe. And then before that, veterans. I never heard of that, but there we go. Okay, learning is networked, it's distance. We have blogs, we have wikis, we have conferencing, software, social networking, so many different tools, and that's all they are. Okay, but let's be careful again, make sure it's just a tool, because you do actually still need a topic, right? You all read that? Like your own paper? Yeah. Okay. All right, wonderful. Even that's dated though, isn't it? Okay, so let's review quickly. There's no box. The world of work and careers changed. School has to change to match. Information is now easily accessible. It's not place-based, and it should allow children to choose what they learn. All the subjects are naturally interrelated. Technology tools exist to help us. Learning can be multi-age and cross-generational. math class is not as efficient as we thought it was, and it's not possible to predict future careers. Okay. Yeah. What does 21st century look like? It's cyclical and it's agile. And what does that mean? It means there's a cycle. We talked about intention, and actually that's wrong. My little diagram, I realized it should go the other way. You start with your intention, go to creation, and then reflection, and keep that going as a cycle of learning. How can that be implemented throughout the day? What does that look like? Starts with, at the beginning of the day, you ask a child, what do you want to accomplish today? Then you ask them, well, how are you going to do that? And then at the end, you ask them, well, what did you learn from your choices? It's pretty simple, isn't it? A cycle of learning. Okay. And the final piece of that cycle is when you share it out to the larger world, and that might happen that day, or it might be a few weeks later, whenever you feel ready to share. So that's the learning cycle completed. And then this part about the cultural environment. We learn more from that than anything else. What would this cultural environment look like? What could it look like? Okay, now I'm going to skip that and that, and start talking about how we can create that kind of culture in our schools and our classrooms. And we do it through meetings, agreements, and iterative change, which means changing quickly, like open source technology does. All right. And part of that is this idea of self-governance. Now, I know that democratic education has a really bad rap in New Zealand. I found that out when I got here, and that's okay, because that's not a term I ever really use. I did have a school and a youth program for a long time where we did democracy, and I always had this big problem, which was the meetings took forever and got boring, and it's just heavy and burdensome, and how can you change that? And I kept saying, how could that be easier? Because that's part of self-direction, right? It's self-governance. And thank God, my friends Nancy and Thomas in the US solved the problem. And it looks a lot like this. You start with the morning having a stand-up meeting that takes 10 minutes, and you go in a circle and you ask each child, what do you want to do today? The questions we just looked at. You end at the end of the day with a short meeting saying, what did you learn about that? And here's a tool that you use to do this, that's very visible, that parents really like, that teachers really like, and that kids really like. It's called the Kanban, and it says, on your mark, get set, go, and finish line. So, what's your intention for the day? Well, I want to do these things. Okay, we'll put them on your mark. And then as you go through the day, then you start by picking what you want to get started on right away. You put it in the go column when you're working on it, and when it's complete, you put it on the finish line. What does this create? Can you see how the value of this? It creates structure that's absolutely flexible and adaptable, and it creates a learning plan that you can flesh out and work with, and it creates visible evidence of learning and topics that are going on. The schools that are doing this right now, the Agile Learning Centers, once they went from not having this to having this, their enrollment doubled in one semester. Because now people could get a grip on what was going on. It didn't look anymore like a free-for-all, like, what is everybody doing? They're all just all over the place. Now we can see, now there's a structure. And this is their wall, where all the kids have their own separate little Kanban. Okay? And it's fun, right? It's interactive, it's colorful, it's really nice, it's a great tool. Okay, the other thing they have is an offerings board. Couldn't find a picture of one, but that's where they list classes, opportunities, resources, mentors, coaches, anything that anybody from the community wants to have. It would probably look similar to this, but it would be more the opportunities and the offerings that are there. Then what can you do? You have your set the week meeting, where you look at what's available on the board, create your schedule, and Jay, you told me about an app, was it called TickTick? TickTick. There's a school in Amsterdam where they use this app, TickTick, and it might look something like that. And this is another way we can use technology. So here's your beginning of the week. Imagine you're a kid, you're coming to school, and you know that you're going to get to create your schedule and choose what you're going to learn this week, and you're really eager because you're going to find out what's on that board and what you might be able to do and tap into. And with the right technology, you can just schedule it all straight into your phone. And in the school in Amsterdam, everybody sees what everybody else is doing, and the classes fill up on this, using this app. And you can be so flexible with it that if you are, let's say you're doing a project and you're totally into it and you've decided you don't want to go and listen to this parent teaching how to grow wheatgrass, right? That's been said they come to the school that day and you've signed up to go and do this, but you're so into your carrot project now that you don't want to stop, so you just click on your thing, sign out of the class, and there you go, you stay. Okay. So at the set the week meeting, you create your schedule, but you can always change it. What else? Now this is where they crack the democratic part. They crack the governance part. What they do is they have change-up meetings that don't take very long. And they use a community mastery board to do it that looks like that. So the change-up meeting is, there's something in our community that needs to be changed up. What is it? Let me see what's on. The first thing is we have an awareness that there's a problem. And then we go immediately to implementation. And this is where it gets to start looking like open source, where every time you upgrade the coding, you publish it straight away. How many people here are on Facebook? A few. Okay. Oh, I need to think of a better example. But I can't, so we'll go with Facebook. So, Facebook, I don't know about you, but every day I get on it now, it seems like there's something new. Yesterday I discovered when I post a photograph now, I can add a little sticker to it. There's a whole new little app piece. Right? But every day almost, there's something different about Facebook and its capability. What are they doing? They are using iterations. They're saying, oh, well, there's a problem. The problem is people probably would like to use stickers. Let's find out. What are we going to do? Well, we'll add this app, see if people use it. And they put it out there. And then they see if it's adopted, and if not, they change it. Right? What can you do in a school? Oh, well, we have a problem that the kids aren't putting the iPads back where they're supposed to be, and the next day we can't find them. What can we do about it? Well, I suggest let's put pins on them, and they have to put the pin on, and that'll say, put your iPad back, and then when they're done, we'll put them back. They'll be reminded that they've got this pin. So you put that in the implementation place, and that's version 1.0 of the solution to the problem. Takes 10 minutes because you're not sitting there analyzing every single possibility, what could go wrong, what was it, and so forth. And you're only trying it for a week anyway. The next week, you might go to version 1.1 or decide that system doesn't work at all and go to version 2.0 completely. Right? You're just practicing it, but eventually you'll come up with something that now becomes your cultural norm. Okay. And then this one is your game shift board. That's how you have your meetings. Isn't that fun? Look, so where you can plan the meeting and how you want it to be at the beginning of it. What's your intention? Is it to create, explore, invent, decide, reflect, or inform? And you just put the pin wherever you want it. What are the memories? Personal brains? Do you need a digital reload, or are you going to use photos? Right? What kind of meetings are it going to be? What are you doing with the bodies? Is it relaxed? Can you lay on the floor? Is it really focused where you need to have like a chair? Or is it going to be really raucous? And you can pick any one of those. And of course, children and adults alike are choosing this and running these meetings the way they need to be for their specific purpose. So this keeps it dynamic. How many people have never seen any of this before? Most of you. Okay, cool. All right. Okay. So, let's see. Yeah. I was going to go through a whole lot of what types of environments this happens in, but reading Yours Energy, we're all getting tired. I'll just flick through. These are 21st century learning things that would be for elementary.
Where is this taking place?
Where is this? Which country? Actually, it's in Motueka. This is Upper Mutri School. Yeah, that's why I picked it. I went to visit. The government here is giving out grants to create these learning environments. They got $500,000 there last time, which is how they were able to create this, right? But it's every 5 years you get some money to keep building the environment. I think by now, though, you've got the idea that the environment's not quite enough. It's only one of the tools. We still need to implement these practices of project-based learning and perhaps having meetings and structuring our day in a more free way, in a flexible way, an adaptable way, and helping kids choose what they're learning about within it.
Right now, there's still a lot more self-paced than there is self-directed. So we're designing teacher training and things like that to help the teachers, and the kids and everybody to transition slowly. You can't just suddenly give everybody a blanket ticket to do what you want whenever you want, in a sense, right? Because you do end up with chaos, because kids need to learn how to handle that. With freedom comes responsibility. And so you give it a bit at a time, and as they gain responsibility and confidence, you give a bit more and you give a bit more. And that's the way we need to implement this, is a bit by bit. Yeah. Okay. So I'm not even going to get into the whole network thing. Let's just say a top of the South Island 21st Century Learning Network is going to happen very soon. It's already being planned, and a lot of the people in this room are part of it. And it's quite exciting. I'll be happy to share it with you some other time. So, I'd like to have question time, but what this was is, I think this is beautiful. This is a butterfly emerging. And most of you know about imaginal cells, yeah? When the butterfly, when the caterpillar goes in and makes the cocoon, it dissolves into soup. And in the soup are imaginal cells that emerge. But at first, did it stop?
No.
It's going. It's slow. Okay. At first, the body, the other cells think that these imaginal cells are invaders, and they're out to, and they start trying to destroy the imaginal cells. But eventually, they lose out. The imaginal cells, there's too many of them, and they can't win. And so what do we end up with? A butterfly. And the butterfly emerges. Well, I think this change in education is a lot like that. But we're pretty much past that point where the other cells are fighting back. The imaginal cells are already winning. And it's not a question anymore of should we, it's how can we not? We have to make these changes if we're going to prepare our kids for the world that's coming for them, so that they can fly. And I do pose this question again. Let's let them get started. Let's support that. Who knows what they might create? I have a feeling it'll be technicolor and beautiful. That's most of what I have to share with you today about 21st century learning, how we might do it. And we have a few minutes left if you have any questions. I'd love for you to write them down if you're not comfortable saying them out loud in the Q section. And I also have this sheet with resources on that you can look to, and a little survey for you to do before you go. So first, though, are there any questions that you have? Yes.
We just came from over here recently from a system which is completely inflexible in France. You said you know.
En France, oui, j'adore en France.
Yeah, so our kids have spent their first 4 years in French school. So
they're how old?
8.5.
Yeah.
5 years. So how is this being adopted at all in France? Because I could see it would be very difficult, apart from private schools.
Yeah, quite honestly, I don't know the answer to your question. I haven't really checked in with what's happening in France in a while. I do know that there are educators that are starting more 21st century initiatives. Oh, I do know some stuff. Okay. And they are making some inroads, but how that's affecting the public school system, I don't know. You really have to actively seek it out in France still. But there are people doing that, for sure. But it's mostly private schools.
Yeah, because it's a set curriculum for every single school in the whole.
Oh, I know, and they what is it? I heard them say something like, oh, I don't know. They're proud to say, oh, it was a minister of education at some point in France saying how we're so proud to be able to say that we know that at 9:22 in the morning on Monday, the 5th of May, every child in France will be learning this and on this page. That's the degree that they took it to. Yeah. Well, thank God you're here, yeah?
But they do it.
Yeah. But you did say, I'm sorry, that in the States, which is also a very controlled system, but there are these new private schools following 21st century learning techniques, but you have to pay a heck of a lot of money to go to the was it Steve Jobs Foundation was backing?
I think there's the Steve Jobs School in Amsterdam, which actually anyone wants to find out more about that, Jay's children went there for New Year, and that's very using a lot of technology tools. But in America, it's the same as everywhere, the conundrum of the private school. We want to create 21st century education. I'm one of those people, and we'd like to do it without any restrictions. Therefore, we're going to be a private school, but that means people can't afford to go to it but want it. So how do we do this? And that's the thing that we've been working on for a while. And one thing I find really, really exciting about this country, and this is why I think I'd like to live here, actually, is there's a readiness here that I haven't seen anywhere else. There's an absolute readiness for transformation, and not just in education, but in all sectors. I'm seeing that and feeling that from people. And some of you may be sitting there going, oh yeah, but she hasn't met this person, and she doesn't know, and it's like, okay. But as an outsider coming in, I can tell you there is a difference in the spirit of the people here to anywhere else I've lived. And it's a spirit of somewhat idealism that's still alive and well. And it's a beautiful thing. And I'd like to see it keep nurturing and growing, because I think in this country in particular, we really have been overrun by the imaginal selves, and it's just time. And we can do this. Any more questions? Yeah.
Sarah, thank you for this. It's really enjoyable, actually.
You're welcome.
I'm really inspired by the clear examples, that you showed, because that's something that was our big question, I guess, from this table, and I think other people had that as well. Is how can we bring that into the current
how can we actually
situation?
Just do it? Yeah.
So, is there any more way? It might be on here, but is there any other ways that we can learn more about what you showed us?
Yep. As I said, it's number 5 in the first list, the Agile Learning Centers. No, sorry, that's alternatives. Where are they? Number 3, Agile Learning Centers. Yeah. A lot of what I showed with you, I got from them. They're friends of mine, and their technology, their system, I've seen and heard it work. It's a beautiful way to do it. And they have a teacher training course. I'd actually love to have them come to New Zealand next summer if there's teachers that want to learn more about how to do this. And so, there's a lot more information we can share on that. And there's also a lot more tools that they use that I didn't share yet, called leveling up and all kinds of stuff. They've really cracked it. They really have. It's a beautiful thing to see.
Is there any way that you would like to maybe somehow come to an agreement to share more information with us?
What do you mean?
Well, would you be keen to go deeper in that material with people who are
absolutely.
interested?
Yeah, absolutely. Anybody that would like to. In fact, we were talking about continuing the conversation even as soon as this weekend, maybe over coffee. Anybody that would like to come and keep discussing this and how we might do this here, not just at Central, but at the other schools in Golden Bay, and also, of course, want to talk to people in Costa Rica and anywhere and everywhere that wants to do this. But so I don't know that we have a time and a place. Jay, we were talking about
Get
that.
your emails down on the piece of
I put
paper.
a survey out on the table. Everyone should be able to get one of these, and ask for your name, phone, email, and what your role is, and ask you to answer us a few questions. Answer the ones you feel comfortable with and not the others. Yeah. What was I going to say, Martin? I don't remember.
Can you also just remind you, this thing about the learning environment is called something else. What is it called?
The modern learning environment?
No, the thing about the environment you learn in is as important as what you learn.
Yes, good question. Let's back up, because that was pretty close to... Oh, it won't back up.
It's just the name and there's something about it.
Oh, the hidden curriculum is Donberg. Yeah. I think I left that off of that sheet. I meant to put it on. Okay. So there's quite a few resources there for you to consult, to start educating yourselves more about education. It really is a social imperative for us to take our charge of the education of our children. And in New Zealand you have more chance of doing that than anywhere else I've seen. You're very lucky, very blessed.
Just on behalf of everyone here, can I thank you very much, Zara. I've found it really inspiring. What I've really liked, I've watched a lot and been to some other lectures, but I love the nuts and bolts, some real, examples there, and that's great. And look forward to building on that.
You're welcome, thank you.
And thanks everyone that came along as well. And if you ever want to sort of find out about what we're doing here at Central, feel free to, if you ever want to come in and have a chat with me, just make an appointment and come in. We're very much at a beginning stage of our journey, and we will always have a lot of restrictions around being a state-funded school, but we're just trying to find, when we see great ideas like this, it means, we can try and work around that and do the best we can.
Yeah. Thanks for bringing that up, Steve. And I'll just say a little more about that. You can imagine in a country like I mentioned where the children take tests every 3 weeks, it's really hard to be flexible. But from my understanding, what you shared with me, Steve, is in New Zealand, every 3 years the ministry comes to kind of evaluate, right?
Aero.
Yeah, Aero. And that gives us actually a lot of flexibility, and one project we're working on right now is how to make all that work. We're creating a way of doing assessment and of doing this learning where the children will actually be exceeding the standards so far beyond what the ministry is expecting that we'll just blow them out of the water. That's our goal. It's not to meet their standards because their standards are silly. We're going to go so far beyond it that we'll just make this a complete no-brainer, and if they don't want to do it, we'll just vote them all out. How's that sound? It could happen. But thank you, Steve.
Yeah, and thank you.